The new Rode Wireless Pro has never been easier to operate. We have two buttons here, left, right, and they can be pressed together at the same time. The left side is our output volume. Once we click on it, we have the selection to increase or decrease our output volume. The right side talks to your transmitters. Here's transmitter 1. We can choose what gain assist we would like to use, or if we hold down the left button, we'll be able to enter in manual mic gain mode so we can really dial it in. If you want to go back to your gain assist, simply hold down the left button and we're back. Press the channel button again, we're on channel 2, we have the same options here. And then lastly, when we go over to gain mode, it tells us what type of gain mode do we want to do out of the receiver port. We can either go do our camera presets, we can turn this into a headphone monitoring system, or we can even use a TRRS headset. Lastly, if we press both buttons down together, we go into our merged or split output modes. So here we are, merged, split, we even have a safety channel. If you have time codes turned on through Rode Central, those will also show up here. The transmitter is super simple. We have one button up here, that's your record button. We can record, we can end recording. The Rode Central app offers some additional features, so go ahead and go to Rode's website to download the app for your computer, or you can go to your mobile app store and download the mobile version. When you open up the app, go ahead and plug in your Rode Wireless Pro through the dock. You'll see everything populate up here, as well as any other Rode products that can talk to the Rode Central app. The first thing you're going to want to learn is that this gear icon is where you can do all your firmware updates. Simply click on here, and it's going to do a firmware check. If there's anything that needs to be updated, go ahead and hit Update All, and you're good to go. The factory reset seems to only reset the Rode Central app, as if you try to do anything, it's going to ask you to unplug all your Rode products. Monitor out is how you want to listen to the internal recordings. So if you want to listen to it through your headphones, your computer monitor, or any other sort of speakers, you're going to want to make sure you set this first. Now let's take a look at the receiver. The receiver, you see pretty much all the things you could set up in the receiver itself. So if we take a look over here with routing and timecode, this is where we see those menus before, from a merge signal, split signal, or a safety signal. If you want to use timecode, you're going to actually have to turn these on, as there's 5 different modes, and you can turn it on by show mode on Rode Wireless Pro so you can have access to it on the receiver. Timecode number 1 is probably the most useful, as it's going to put all your audio on the left side and your timecode on the right side. Same thing if you're plugging it into a computer. This is easy for your programs to match everything up later. Timecode number 2 is a bit unique. This is when you're in headset mode. So you have a headset plugged into your receiver. You're going to be able to monitor both transmitters so you can hear what's going on, but your USB side is going to have the timecode on the right side, and on the left side it's going to have your voice. When you merge the internal recording and timecodes all together, you'll end up with 3 pieces of audio: transmitter, transmitter, your voice coming from the headset. Timecode number 3 is a bit similar. You're still going to have your headset mode on so you can monitor what's going on between the 2 transmitters, except this time on your USB side, you're going to have both transmitters and your voice all in one channel on the left, and your timecode is going to be on the right. Timecode number 4 simply goes from headset mode to headphone mode on your receiver, so you're going to be monitoring both the transmitters, and then the left side on the USB part is going to be just the transmitters, and the right side is going to be your timecode information. The last one is Timecode 5, which I deem also useful if you want to jam sync your cameras, in which case both the USB side as well as the output side is just sending out a timecode signal so you can jam sync. With the gain mode, this is where you can set some certain presets. So from here, you'll notice that we now have a preset button. We can click over here. We see that I already have the Sony a7S III. If you have other cameras, go ahead and click on the plus button, select your manufacturer, select your camera, click next. The website is going to give you some additional information on what to set up for that specific camera. After that, everything is set up here so you can jump to each different camera systems quickly. If you want to delete them, go ahead and click these 3 dots here and remove. In terms of the screen brightness, we can either have it dim or we can have it on auto. That O button on the top, here is where you can choose what that function is going to be. It can either do nothing, or it can mark something in the internal recording so you know what take you're on, or you can activate the transmitters to start recording from far away. This is probably the most useful. Lastly, we have our time codes. We can turn it on. From here, we have our timecode modes again. We can turn on timecode 1, which I believe is the most useful, and timecode number 5. In order for timecode to work correctly, you want to make sure your frame rate is exactly the same that's coming out of the camera. Some cameras might say it's doing 24p like Sony cameras, but it's actually 23.98. Panasonic cameras and Blackmagic cameras can actually do a pure 24, so you want to make sure that you're not mixing these two together. If you're shooting at a higher frame rate, like 60 frames a second, then all you have to do is choose the one frame rate that's divided by 2, so in which case, 30 frames a second. If your 60 frames a second is actually 59 point so and so, then you're going to want to use 29.97. Lastly, we have the real-time function for timecode. I would personally turn this on. The reason is because when it's doing real-time, the device is actually paired to your clock's internal system. Therefore, whenever you're recording, it doesn't matter what time of day, it's able to sync together. Timecode mode number 1 is probably the most useful for solo content creators with one camera. If you're a wedding filmmaker, you have one audio track and a whole bunch of clips, it's going to take you a while to sync, but not with timecode. So in timecode mode number 1, your left channel is going to get the wireless signal from the Rode Wireless Pro, and then the right side is going to get this timecode signal, which sounds something like this altogether. So right now I have my... It does not sound good. And if you take a look at the timecode here, it doesn't start the same as the audio clip. It's the camera's own internal recording, so we need to change that. We're going to select all 3 video clips, right-click, and we're going to say, I want to update the timecode from the audio track. It's going to grab that information from that audio track, and now the timecodes have changed. So now we need it to sync to our internal recording from the Rode Wireless Pro. So we're going to go ahead and select everything, right-click, and say, hey, I want you to audio sync based on the timecode itself. And once we do that, we take a look that the synced audio is now pointing to that very audio clip. So if we play this one clip again, my receiver on timecode mode number 1, we don't hear that weird timecode sound anymore. So let's add everything in here and let's see what it sounds like throughout the time. So here's me recording it right in the beginning. The recording now, and in 15 minutes, I'm gonna record again, and then I'm gonna, okay. So here's 15 minutes later. This is the second clip now after about 10 to 15 minutes, and I'm just, and then here is 42 minutes later. All right, so it's been about 30 some minutes, and we're going to sync all of this up. And that's how you can sync multiple video clips in seconds with timecode. Lastly, let's take a look at the transmitter. The first time you click on it, you're going to see any sort of recording files you have here. And when you do, you can click on one and you can simply drag around and listen to certain parts. You'll notice that there's this red spot over here. This is when the transmitter and receiver lost signal. So it's very easy to know what sections you need to export because you don't actually have it in your camera. The easiest way to make a selection in any part of the clip is to click on the right side of your mouse, not the left, and then hold and drag. Now we can export this clip and we have our settings right here. Over here, we can determine what we want to label this clip. If you look over here, we can even color code the clips, making it easy for us to organize. From here, we can have a bunch of different export settings, stuff like Spotify, iTunes, custom, or just straight up 32-bit float, and we can export. In terms of custom, we can choose different formats. WAV is a higher fidelity file versus an MP3. Sample rates, we have 44.1 and 48. Everything is usually 48 these days, so I would keep it there. For bit depth, we can choose 32-bit float, but if your editor cannot handle it, you can also choose 24-bit. Lastly is loudness. This is a really awesome feature. So what it's going to do, it's going to average out everything so that you have a really good file to work with. Choose whichever one you like to start off with. I usually choose around -16. When you're finished, go ahead and hit Export Selection. Go to the folder that you want to export in, hit Open, and let it export. If you don't want to deal with the whole export thing, when your dock is connected, your transmitters will show up as hard drives. So go ahead and click in it, grab the files you want, drag and drop. Lastly, let's take a look at the gear icon. Over here, we see all the different options we can basically maneuver with our receiver. So we can choose what gain assist we would like, and depending on what gain assist, we can also choose the mic gain. That little O button up top, we can either choose to mute the transmitter itself, or we can set a marker in the internal recording. The LED lights in the front can be dim or they can be bright. I usually choose dim. And then the recording button, you can either have it manual or you can set it to always, so when the transmitter turns on, it immediately starts recording. There's plenty of storage inside the transmitter. I already have some recordings inside, but the maximum is 44 hours of recording. That's plenty. When you're done with everything, you can have the option to erase the entire transmitter, or you can let everything keep recording until it's full, and then from there, it's going to start erasing the oldest one and record over it. Last, we have dropout markers. When it's enabled, you'll see that red zone we saw in the internal recording, which lets us know easily when we've lost signal. The last little tip over here is you'll notice I have Wireless Pro A, A1, and A2. Simply double click on this and you can rename this to whatever you want, making it easier for you to know what's being plugged in and which system you want to activate.